I guess I'm kind of interested, and I'm going to have you fast forward through this period because there's like 7 years between when you get out and before you start True Made Foods, and that really lays the background or the foundation, if you will, for being able to go into this new venture.
Right. So yeah, what happened to me, I mean, I got out in 2008. Nobody was hiring. I would get interviews, but it was just, they were just going through the motions. And again, I wasn't very great at the interviews at the time too. I wasn't prepared. I didn't trade. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was not prepared. And, you know, having 8.5 years in the Navy didn't help me at all either when everybody was looking for a job because everything was falling apart. And like these industries like banking and consulting were falling apart and they were firing people and they weren't hiring, but they were going through the motions to pretend like everything was fine. And so you get an interview, but there wouldn't be a chance that you had a chance to get in there. They especially wouldn't hire somebody who has 8.5 years of military experience and 0 corporate experience, right? So you quickly become in that type of situation. I quickly became bottom of the rung. So my wife and I had just had our first kid. My wife had been out she got out a few years before me. She got her grad degree in public policy and economics from LSE. We had student debt. We had our first kid and we were pregnant with our second. And we were living in London with only savings in dollars and the pound was 2 to 1. So it was not a great situation. My granddad was getting near to the end of his life. He was in his mid-90s at this point, and he was starting to gift out some of his money. So he gave us like $9,000, and that helped us survive. So that was a huge help. And then we did some consulting work and things like this. We would find odd, consulting jobs that we would be able to do. But this is that situation of like really no job prospect, no aspect whatsoever, and just everything looming over us was really scary. And that's kind of what drove me into this really pushed me more into the entrepreneurship thing and being able to do anything in any place, anywhere. And that drove me then to going into emerging markets because, and I was always interested in emerging markets, but this really pushed me in because that was the only place where you could really find a job at the time. So I actually took a job in Bulgaria. Like 2 weeks after my second son was born, I moved to Bulgaria. My wife moved back to the US and lived with my parents. I took a job in Bulgaria where I ran a plastics factory. I knew nothing about plastics. I didn't speak Bulgarian. We lived in a small town. And that was like an MBA for like a post-MBA doctorate, I guess. It was because I was actually running a business, hiring and firing people, doing financial statements, trying to raise money for the business to keep it going, all these different things at the same time, and trying to make this business profitable that had been unprofitable for 3 years. And so that was like a great thing and that really, even though that didn't really work out because the owner was a jerk and he was an American hedge fund guy living in London. And as soon as we made the company profitable, he took all the money out to cover his losses in the market. So that was another lesson, a hard lesson on that, you don't trust the finance guys. And two, that I learned, and so financially it didn't work out great, but I learned a ton about how to run a real business, like a manufacturing business, and run with real products and things like that. And have
it's a lot different. It's a lot different running a real business as compared to the consulting into somebody else's business. So I can imagine how much additional sort of not only stress but things that you learn when you're feet in the factory floor. But I would encourage anybody and everybody to try, if you really want to get into business, is really to be in that type of situation where you're dealing with real products and real sales and real real working capital constraints. When in business school and pre-2008, like the consultants like McKinsey were like deified almost. And one of my good friends from Vanderbilt, who was also ROTC, he was a year ahead of me and he was a surface warfare officer and he had gone to London first. And he was the one, he got his MBA before me, did his executive, and he is the one who convinced me actually when I moved there to do the executive MBA at London Business School as well. But he got out in 2005, and when the market was peaking, and he did a really good job of making sure figuring out what he wanted to do, and he got hired by McKinsey. While I was running the Bulgarian factory, I went back to London to meet with the owners, and I stayed with him, and he'd been working for McKinsey for 3 years by that point. And, we compared the stuff that we were doing, and, the stuff I just knew so much more just by running a factory for 4 months than he did for being a consultant for 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
The knowledge gap was huge. And the tools, we were scrappy. At the time we were using Google Mail for our email, which was free, and using all these Google Office things now, which is something that almost everybody does. At the time it was free. It was an amazing thing. And and he was, McKinsey was still using Lotus Notes for their email. It was the lack of innovation at this huge company that was supposed to be this leader in business was shocking. So it just goes to show really the scrappy, the small guys really do know a lot more, and you learn a lot more in those situations if you come in it with the right attitude.
Well, let me jump off on something, because you just used the word innovative and scrappy and small. And whenever you start a new venture, and we're talking to the founder of True Made Foods, which is a unique condiment company that Navy veteran Abe Kamarck founded. You have to be scrappy because you are small, and you have to be innovative. And really, what you tackled was this problem in condiments, which is they're just loaded with sugar. And right. You said, hey, we can do something different in this space. But again, it's sort of who are you to think you could actually pull this off?
Right.
Listen to this full episode and more on the Apple Podcasts app, Blog Talk Radio, Google Podcasts, or iHeartRadio. And now streaming on Amazon Music, Audible, and Spotify.